of day 2 of the phase 3 of the first tranche of the Undercover Policing Inquiry. We've just heard from James Scobie, QC, who is representing Lindsay German, as well as Richard Chesham and Mary. Mostly about Lindsay German today, and well, just the infiltration of the SWP generally, really, and the role in which Cooper and Clark, who were 2 of the undercover officers, Colin Clark and Phil Cooper, who infiltrated the Socialist Workers' Party and the Right to Work campaign, ended up as treasurers in the Right to Work campaign. Over a period of 6 years, were basically at the centre of the Central Committee, arguably influenced their culture beyond any sort of influence they had on the activity and like intelligence gathering. We also had the opening statement from the Home Office first thing. There's literally nothing to report from that. It was a complete non-event. They basically said, we've got nothing to say, but we support the inquiry. Largely pointless them coming, I would argue. But there we go. It was good to hear James Scobie. It was, very forthright. After yesterday's police lawyers, one of the things, he really focused on was this idea that there was no subversion to report on. I'm not so sure if I personally buy that. It's also, he's very much looking at the Socialist Workers' Party, which is a political organisation I don't have any affinity to. Though I would say that when we're talking about the Socialist Workers' Party in the 70s and 80s, that's quite a different beast to what we maybe knew in the 90s to now. A lot of people on Twitter pointing out the connections between the undercover police who abuse women and Comrade Delta and all that stuff with the Socialist Workers' Party and the internal suppression of sexual stuff, abuse within the party. We have to remember that, going back to the days of the International Socialists and the Socialist Workers' Party of the 70s, and you're talking about a huge mass member organisation, which is quite a high turnover of members. I don't think really characterising them in reference to more recent things is that helpful particularly. But he looked a lot at the blacklisting, or the vetting, as the police insist on calling it. Just how pernicious it was, how deep it went, and very much draws the link between the successful industrial disputes of 1972 and the change in the terms of reference about what subversion was in order to get to cover that kind of activity. Basically looking to take successful trade union activists out of the workforce. It's hard to argue with any of that, really. It seems fairly clear to me that that's exactly what they did. This whole idea that subversion's overblown, that these were not subversive, that the Socialist Workers' Party is not a subversive organisation because it doesn't intend to start a putsch or anything like that. Fair enough, but self-declared enemy of capitalism. I'm a self-declared enemy of capitalism, for what it's worth. Is that subversive? In terms of legal definitions, I think these things are very important, of course, particularly in terms of the inquiry, the legalistic element of it all. It's very clear that the undercover units were not, the Special Demonstration Squad was not acting in a legal manner. The definition of subversion was as wide as possible in order to allow the police to do whatever they wanted. It's also very clear that that MI5 was very much directing things, that essentially Special Demonstration Squad officers were just lackeys for the security services, hoovering up information on their behalf to be passed on for, a lot of it just ending up in the hands of employers. And not just like one of the things that was really strongly made was it's not just the employers of national security issues or civil servants or senior positions or anything like that. We're talking about things like the post office, anybody who like list X companies, so companies that provide services to the government on supposed national security issues. So we're talking like General Motors, Ford, all sorts of employment, all sorts of jobs. Social workers, probation workers, kind of everything really. Any kind of company that had seems to have any sort of relationship with the police or the security services was getting really, really, really detailed, like blacklisting material. And it like the level to which anybody who came into contact with any sort of left wing organisation, like there's talk about attendee like 200 attendees to a Blair Peach picket, a peaceful one. Only 7 of the people there did not already have a special branch file. That gives you an idea, that how much we heard during the second phase of just how detailed, how deep it went. That everybody who like bought a copy of Socialist Worker was getting a file on them that was listing their their name, their age, their address, their physical appearance, their banking, their trade union membership, their friends, whether they drove or not, like what vehicles they owned. Incredible levels of detail. Obviously, like as we heard before, the levels of the physical descriptions of female activists were particularly sexualized. Scobie's Jim Scobie's opening statement is you can download it. There's large amounts of referencing. Well worth like trawling through that if you're wondering where he's getting some of these statements from. It's all very well referenced. We'll be back again. It was a 15-minute break, so I've only just been talking for a couple of minutes. So probably another 10, about 7 minutes actually before we go live again. So I'm just going to take a break now. No Chris with me today, sadly. He can't get away from home. He's going to be doing a Twitter Spaces at like 1:15, whenever the lunch break's meant to be, because that's going to move around. The Home Office deciding not to speak for very long completely has thrown the inquiry. They're all very confused, so things are being rearranged a bit. Next up, we've got Fiona Murphy, who's representing Category F, which is the families. Then after her, we've got Charlotte Kilroy, who was mentioned quite a few times yesterday. She's representing Category H, which is people who were deceived in long-term sexual relationships, essentially. Majority of it is the women, though, 1 or 2 other people as well. And then after that, she's speaking again, representing Madeline and Diane Langford. Well worth sticking around for those 3 statements, 2 people. I'll be going live again in the next break. See you then. Cheers.